Maybe he was mad. Maybe he had a sixth sense. Or was he really haunted? He told me the first part of the story and I saw the last part with my own eyes. At school my friend Howdy and I hated a boy called Visca. When we did something wrong he always told the teacher. One day we stole some cherries from a tree. Do you know who did it, Visca? The teacher asked. It was Haldane and Winston. He replied. Later Haldane asked him how he knew it was us. I didn't know. He said. I just felt certain and I was right. Haldane and I grew up. Visca became a vegetarian and never drank alcohol. He also became Sir George Visca. When we all left Oxford University I went away to India. After a year I came back and wanted to see Haldane. He was always happy, kind and honest. I wanted to see the smile in his blue eyes again and hear his happy laugh. So I went to visit him in London. But this time he did not laugh. He was miserable. His face was pale and he looked weak and ill. He was packing his things and there were lots of big boxes full of furniture and books around the house. I'm moving, he said. I don't like this house. There's something strange about it. I'm going tomorrow. Let's go out and have some dinner. I said. I'm too busy. He looked nervously around the room. Look, I'm really happy to see you, but why don't you go to the restaurant and bring back some food? When I came back we sat by the fire and ate the food. I tried to tell jokes and he tried to laugh, but sometimes he looked into the shadows in the corners of the room. We finished our meal and then I said, well, what's the matter? You tell me, I answered. He was silent. Again he looked into the shadows. You're very nervous, I said. What is it? Drink, gambling, women. Tell me or go and tell your doctor. You're ill, my friend. I won't be your friend if you talk like that. Well, I am your friend and something is wrong. Come on. Tell me. But he did not tell me anything. He asked me to stay for the night, but I had a room in a hotel, so I left him. When I returned the next morning he was gone and some men were putting his boxes into a van. Haldane did not leave his new address. I saw him again more than a year later. He came to see me early one morning before breakfast. He looked really bad, worse than before. His face was thin and white like a ghost and his hands were shaking. I invited him to have breakfast with me, but I did not ask him any questions because I knew he wanted to tell me something. I made coffee, talked and waited. I'm going to kill myself, he began. Don't worry. I won't do it here or now. I'll do it when it's necessary. When I can't continue to live anymore and I want somebody to know why. Can I tell you? Yes. Of course. I said, astonished. You must promise not to tell anybody while I'm alive. He said. I promise. He looked at the fire silently. It's difficult to begin. He said. You remember George Visca, don't you? Yes. I haven't seen him for a long time, but somebody told me he went to an island to teach vegetarianism to the cannibals. I laughed. Anyway, he's gone. Haldane did not laugh. Yes, he's gone, but not to an island. He's dead. Dead? How? You remember he always knew when people did bad things and told the teacher. Well, he told a girl some bad things about me. I loved her but she left me. Then she died. Suddenly. Oh, it was terrible. When I went to the funeral, he was there. I came back home and sat thinking about it, and then he arrived. I hope you told him to go away. I said angrily. No. I listened to him. He came to say it was better that she was dead and we hadn't got married. I asked why and he said because there was madness in my family. And is that? I don't know, but he said he knew and had told my girlfriend. I said I never knew anything about madness in the family, and he said, so you see it's better you didn't get married, isn't it? And then I put my hands around his neck. I don't know if I meant to kill him, but that's what happened. I was shocked. I said nothing. What can you say when your friend tells you he is a murderer? Haldane continued. I saw that he was dead, but I was very calm. I sat down and thought, there's no blood, no weapon. Everybody knows Viskar is going to an island, and he told me he said goodbye to them, so there's no problem. I must get rid of his body, that's all. How? He smiled. No, I won't tell you. You promise not to tell anybody, but maybe you'll talk in your sleep or when you have a fever one day. I'll be safe if you don't know where the body is. Do you see? I was sorry for my friend, but I could not believe he was a murderer. I said, yes, I see. Look, let's go away together. Let's travel and see the world and forget about Viskar. He looked very happy. You understand, and you don't hate me. Why didn't I tell you before? It's too late now. Too late? No, it isn't. Come on. We'll pack our suitcases tonight. We'll go where nobody can find us. He said. When I tell you what has happened to me, you'll change your mind. But I know what has happened to you. No. He said slowly. I've told you what happened to him. Not what happened to me. That's very different. Did I tell you what his last words were? Just before I put my hands around his neck, he said, careful, Haldane, you never get rid of my body. Well, I got rid of his body and I forgot about his last words. But a year later I was sitting here and I suddenly remembered them. I got rid of your body very easily, Viskar. I said, and then I looked at the carpet in front of the fire and Haldane screamed very loudly. I can't tell you. No, I can't. At that moment we heard thunder outside. I went to the window and saw some dark storm clouds in the sky. Where was I? Haldane said. Oh yes, I looked at the carpet and there he was. Viskar. I can't explain it. The door was closed. The windows were closed. He wasn't there before and he was there now. That's all. A hallucination, I said. That's exactly what I thought. He answered. But I touched it. It was real. It was heavy and hard like stone. The arms were rigid like the arms of a statue. It was a hallucination, I repeated. Well, I thought somebody had put him here to frighten me. So I went to the place where I had hidden him and he was there just as he was a year before. My dear Haldane, I said, this is very funny. You might think it's funny, but when I wake up in the night and think of it, it isn't funny at all. I don't want to die in the dark, Winston. That's why I think I'll kill myself, so I'm sure that I won't die in the dark. Is that all? No, he came back again. I was asleep on the train one day, and when I woke up he was on the seat opposite me. He looked the same as before, hard and rigid like a statue. I threw him out of the window in a tunnel. If I see him again, I'll kill myself. You think I'm mad, but I'm not. You can't help me. Nobody can help me. He knew, you see. He said you never get rid of my body, and I can't. He always knew things. Winston, I promise you I'm not mad. I don't think you're mad. I think your mind is disturbed, but we'll stay together. If you can talk to me, you won't imagine things. So we went traveling together, and I was full of hope. Haldane was always a rational man, and I could not believe he was mad. I wanted to help him get better. After a month or two, the madness passed, and we joked and laughed again. I was extremely happy that my old friend was normal. He's forgotten about Visca, I thought, and now he's fine. We arrived in Bruges, where there was a big exhibition and all the hotels were full. We could only find one room with a single bed in a hotel called the Grande Vigna, so I had to sleep in the armchair. We had dinner and went to a pub, and it was late when we returned to our room. We talked for a while, and then Haldane got into bed. I tried to sleep in the armchair, but it was not very comfortable. I was nearly asleep when Haldane began to talk about his will. I've left everything to you, Winston. He said, I know I can trust you to take care of everything. Thank you, I said sleepily. Let's talk about it in the morning. But he continued telling me what a good friend I was. I told him to go to sleep, but he said he was thirsty. Oh, all right, I said, light the candle and go and get some water, and then please let me sleep. No, you light it. I don't want to get out of bed in the dark. I might step on something or walk into something that wasn't there when I got into bed. I lit the candle, and he sat up in bed and looked at me. His face was very pale, his hair untidy, and his eyes were shining. That's better, he said. Oh, look here. There are two big letters on the sheet in red cotton. G.V. George Visker. No, it's the symbol of the Hotel Gonvinier, I said. Hurry up and get the water. Please come with me, Winston. I'll go down by myself, and I went to the door with the candle in my hand. He jumped off the bed in a second. No, I don't want to stay alone in the dark, he said like a frightened child. I tried to make a joke of it, but I was very disappointed. It was clear to me that all my time spent trying to help him had been wasted, and that he was not better after all. We went down as quietly as we could and got some water from the dining room. Haldane took the candle from me and went very slowly back towards our room. He looked round very carefully. I knew what he was looking for, and I became angry and nervous. When we entered the room, I almost expected to see something on the carpet. But of course there was nothing. I put out the candle, pulled the blankets around me, and tried to get comfortable in my chair so I could sleep. Again. You've got all the blankets, Haldane said. No, I haven't. Only the ones I had before. Well, I can't find mine. I'm so cold. Light the candle. Quick, light it. There's something horrible. But I could not find the matches. Light the candle. Light the candle. He shouted. If you don't, he'll come to me. He'll come in the dark. I can't die in the dark. Please, when some light the candle. I am lighting it, I said angrily. But in the dark I was trying to find the matches with my hands. On the shelf, the table, I could not remember where I had put them. You're not going to die. It's all right. I'll get the matches in a second. It's cold. It's cold. It's cold. He said like that 3 times, and then he screamed loudly like a child or like a rabbit attacked by dogs. What is it? I cried. There was silence. Then there is slowly. It's Fisker, he said. And his voice seemed strange and distant. Of course it isn't. My hand found the matches as I spoke. He's here. He screamed. Here next to me in the bed. I lit the candle. I ran to the bed. He was lying on the edge of the bed. Next to him was a dead man. White and cold. Haldane had died in the dark. There was a simple explanation. Haldane and I were in the wrong room. The dead man's room. His name was Felix Leblanc, and he had died from a heart attack earlier that day. I found out more information in England. The police found the body of a man with a bottle of poison in his hand in a railway tunnel. His name was Simmons, and he had drunk poison in Haldane's carriage because he was depressed. Haldane had thrown his body out of the window. Haldane left me all his possessions in his will. I asked a police inspector to be with me when I opened the boxes he had left me. Inside one were the bodies of 2 men. One man was identified later. He was a salesman who had died of epilepsy. The other body was Fisker's. I leave it to you to explain the events in this story. I cannot find an explanation that satisfies me. At sunset, young Goodman Brown stepped into the street of Salem Village. But then he put his head back inside his house, and kissed his young wife, Faith. She put her pretty head outside the house. The wind played with the pink ribbons in her hair, while she called her husband. Dearest love, she said, please leave in the morning and sleep in your own bed tonight. Please stay with me tonight, dear husband. My love and my Faith, answered young Goodman Brown. Tonight I must stay away from you. I must make this journey between now and sunrise. I will wait for you to return, said Faith, with her pink ribbons. Say your prayers, dear Faith, and go to bed early. Then nothing will happen to you. The young man walked on and then looked back. He saw Faith's head with her pink ribbons. She was still looking at him. Poor little Faith, he thought. I should not leave her alone while I go on this journey. She often talks of dreams. When she spoke to me there was unhappiness in her face. Perhaps a dream told her what I am doing tonight. Oh, but it will kill her to think of it. She is an angel, and after tonight I will stay close to her forever. With this excellent resolution for the future, Goodman Brown felt better. He walked quickly toward his evil purpose. He took a dark, mysterious road in the forest with tall, dark trees all around him. It was very lonely, and he did not know what was hidden behind the dark trees. There could be an Indian behind every tree. Said Goodman Brown to himself, he was afraid. He looked behind him and said, "What if the devil is here?" On the road in front of him there was a man sitting under an old tree. He got up and said, "You are late, Goodman Brown." Surprised by his sudden appearance, he replied nervously, "I was with Faith." It was now very dark in the forest. The second traveler was about 50 years old and looked a lot like Goodman Brown. They looked like father and son, but although the older man was simply dressed, he had a certain air of one who knew the world. He would be comfortable at the governor's table or at King William's court. But the only unusual thing about him was his staff. It was a strange staff. It looked like a living serpent. Of course, it was probably Goodman Brown's imagination because it was very dark in the forest. "Come, Goodman Brown," cried his fellow traveler. "You are walking too slowly. Take my staff if you are tired." "My friend," said Goodman Brown, stopping. "I met you here because I promised. But now I want to return home because I am worried about this journey." "Really?" replied the older companion. "Let us walk on. If I can convince you while we walk, then you must not go back. And if I cannot convince you, then you can go back. We have just entered the forest." Goodman Brown started walking again. "My father never went to the forest on such a journey, and neither did his father before him. We are a family of honest men and good Christians. I will be the first Brown that ever took this path in the forest and had such friends." "That's what you wanted to say," said the older man. "I have known your family very well. I knew your grandfather and your father. I helped your grandfather when he whipped the Quaker woman in Salem. And I helped him to burn an Indian village. They were my good friends, and we walked along this path many times, and returned after midnight. I am surprised that they never spoke about these things. But I can understand why. We are a people of prayer and work, and we do not tolerate evil." "Evil or not," said the traveler with the staff, "I know many important people here in New England. Religious men, government officials, and the governor himself." "Really?" cried Goodman Brown. "I don't know the governor or government officials, but if I continue this journey, how can I meet the eye of that good old man? Our minister at Salem Village. His voice will make me tremble." While now, the older traveler had listened seriously. But he suddenly started laughing loudly. He laughed violently, and his serpent-like staff seemed to move. "Ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha," he shouted again and again. Then he said, "Well, go on, Goodman Brown, go on, but please don't kill me with laughing." "To end the discussion," said Goodman Brown angrily, "there is my wife, Faith. It will break her dear little heart." "If that is the case," answered the other, "then go home, Goodman Brown. I don't want anything bad to happen to Faith." On the path in front of them, they saw an old lady who had taught Goodman Brown catechism when he was a child. She was still his spiritual teacher, together with the minister, and Deacon Guican. "How strange that Goody Chloe is in the forest tonight," said Goodman Brown. "With your permission, my friend, I will take another path through the woods and leave this Christian woman behind." I don't want to meet her. She may ask me where I am going. Very well, said the older traveler. You go on through the woods, and I will walk on the path. The young man turned into the woods, but watched his companion who walked along the path. The old lady was walking along quickly for a woman of her age. The traveler touched her neck with his staff. A devil! Screamed the old lady. It's your old friend, said the traveler. Ah, of course it is you, your worship. Yes, it is really you. And in the image of Goodman Brown's grandfather, cried the old woman. Well, I was ready for the meeting, but I had no horse to ride on. My broomstick has disappeared. I think the witch Goody-Core is stolen. So I decided to come on foot. If you give me your arm, we will be there shortly. I cannot give you my arm, answered her friend. But here is my staff. He threw it on the ground, and Goodman Brown thought that the staff took the form of a serpent, but he wasn't sure. First he looked up, and then he looked down, and he did not see Goody-Cloys or the serpent-like staff. All he saw was his fellow traveler who was waiting for him calmly. That old woman taught me catechism, said young Goodman Brown. And there was a world of meaning in that simple comment. They continued walking in the forest and talking. The older traveler broke the branch of a tree and used it as a walking staff. Suddenly Goodman Brown sat down under a tree and refused to continue. My friend, he said, I have decided that that horrible old woman can go to the devil if she wants. I always thought she wanted to go to heaven. That is not a reason to leave my dear faith and follow her. The older traveler said calmly, sit here and rest. When you want to continue, here is my staff to help you. He threw his companion the staff and disappeared into the dark forest. Goodman Brown sat there for a few moments. He was proud of himself because he had a clean conscience and he could look Deacon Gookin straight in the eye. And that night he could sleep in Faith's arms instead of spending the night in the forest. As he was thinking these pleasant thoughts, he heard the sound of horses along the path. He decided to hide in the forest. Goodman Brown did not recognize the men on the horses because it was too dark. However, he thought he heard the voices of the minister and Deacon Gookin. The voice that sounded like the deacon said, I can't miss tonight's meeting. There will be people of our community from Falmouth and others from Connecticut and Rhode Island, and there will be Indian men of magic who know a lot about devilry. There will also be a lovely young woman who will join our group. Very well, Deacon Gookin, replied the old minister. Let us go quickly. We must not be late. The horses galloped through the forest. Goodman Brown was very surprised and his heart was heavy. He looked up at the sky to see if there was a heaven above him. He saw the sky and the bright stars. With heaven above and faith below, I will resist to the devil, cried Goodman Brown. While he looked up at the sky and prayed, he saw a black cloud directly above him. From the black cloud he heard the sound of confused voices. They sounded like the voices of his own townspeople. Then he heard the sad voice of a young woman. Faith, shouted Goodman Brown, who was very worried, and the forest echoed. Faith, 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 faith. The cries of anger and terror filled the night. Then there were sounds of other voices, terrible screams and laughter. The black cloud passed over his head and something fell down slowly. It was a pink ribbon. My faith is gone, he cried. Oh, there is no good in this world. This world belongs to the devil. Young Goodman Brown was desperate. He took his staff and started walking very quickly. The road became darker and more frightening. There were strange, terrible sounds everywhere. Ha 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 ha, cried Goodman Brown, when the wind laughed at him. You can't frighten me. Come witch, come wizard, come the devil himself. Here comes Goodman Brown. He's not afraid of you. In all the mysterious forest, the figure of Goodman Brown was the most frightening. He went forward courageously as he listened to a strange chorus of human voices. Then suddenly he reached an opening in the forest. The opening looked like an altar. It was surrounded by burning trees that looked like candles. The red light of the fire was everywhere. What a strange group, said Goodman Brown. In this group there were ministers, church members of Salem Village, pious ladies, important men of the government, and young girls. Good old Deacon Gukuin was there too. However, among these good people there were also thieves, criminals, and bad people. They were all together. But where is faith? Thought Goodman Brown nervously. He heard a hymn. It was a slow, sad hymn about dark sins and evil. The chorus sang and a loud organ played. Goodman was singing to the devil. It was an image of horror. Then suddenly a voice cried, "Bring in the converts." When he heard this, Goodman Brown approached the group and he felt evil. He thought he was his dead father calling him. Then he saw a sad woman who put out her hand to warn him. Was she his mother? Then the old minister, and Deacon Gukuin, took his arm and brought him forward. A thin woman with a veil on her face walked between Goody Cloys, the pious catechism teacher, and Martha Carrier, an evil woman. Martha Carrier wanted to become the queen of hell. The converts stood there surrounded by the fire. "Welcome, my children," said the dark figure. "You have now found your true nature and your destiny. My children, look behind you." They turned around and saw the fire. There was a strange smile on every dark face. "All the people you knew and respected are here. You thought they were better than you, but they are all here worshiping me," said the dark figure. "Tonight you will know all their darkest secrets. You will know that respected men of the church have said evil words to young girls, that pious women have poisoned their husbands, and that young men have killed their fathers to get their money. You will understand the mystery of sin and evil, and now, my children, look at each other." They all looked at each other. Suddenly Goodman Brown saw Faith and she saw her husband. Remember, evil is the nature of all people. Evil must be your only happiness. "Welcome again, my children." "Welcome," repeated the devil worshippers. Young Goodman Brown and Faith stood among the others. They seemed undecided. Did they want to go on? Goodman Brown looked at his wife and she looked at him. "Faith, Faith," cried Goodman Brown. "Look up to heaven and resist the devil." He did not know if Faith obeyed him. After he had spoken, he found himself alone with the sound of the wind in the forest. He was standing against a cold, humid rock. A branch of a tree that had been on fire was now cold and wet. The next morning, young Goodman Brown walked slowly in Salem Village. He was a very confused man. He saw the good minister walking near the cemetery and preparing his sermon. Goodman Brown avoided the old man. Old Deacon Gookin was praying and Goodman Brown could hear his prayers through the open window. Who is he praying to? Thought Goodman Brown. Goody Cloyce, the pious old Christian, was giving religious instruction to a little girl. Goodman Brown pulled the little girl away. Near the church he saw Faith's head with the pretty pink ribbons. She was very happy to see her husband and almost kissed him in front of the whole village. But Goodman Brown looked at her severely and sadly and walked on. Did Goodman Brown fall asleep in the forest and only have a terrible dream about a witch meeting and the devil? Perhaps, but it was a dream of evil omen for young Goodman Brown. After that strange night he became a sad, dark, almost desperate man. On Sunday when the congregation sang a hymn, he could not listen to it. He could still hear the frightening hymn of the night in the forest. That night he often awoke and moved away from Faith. When the family prayed he looked at them angrily and turned away. After a long life Goodman Brown's body was carried to his grave followed by Faith, his children and grandchildren. There was a procession with many friends, but there were no hopeful words on his tombstone. Because his last hour was very sad and hopeless.